Okay, we do have one last caller that wants to talk about
All right.
morality. So we're going to try to take this quick and hopefully not keep Arden up too late. Hey there, Dan. How you doing?
Hey, great to hear from you guys. How's it going?
Pretty good. I'm just so glad that you hung on as long as you have.
It's been that long. How you guys doing tonight?
Good. What did you have on your mind?
I wanted to call in. So I called in too because you were looking for callers, but I've often wondered, first of all, I love all your guys' content, but I've often wondered, I believe both of you don't believe in objective morality. You believe that morality is subjective. Is that correct?
Depends on what you mean by objective. What do you mean by objective morality?
Independent of mind. That's what I mean by objective. Morality, that's
Okay.
phenomena that we
Fair enough.
experience, right? Yeah.
Fair enough. So some people want to call that absolute morality versus objective. So it's this weird semantic game that I just like to get cleared up to see we're on the same page. John, do you want to go first on this one? I ranted long on the last one.
Well, the last one had a lot more of your wheelhouse there with both
Mm,
evolution and the theology. But so I tend to go with whenever I'm describing it from like a like whenever a religious person makes an argument about morality, what they mean is absolute morality, which I guess would be mind independent morality.
mhm.
I typically go with absolute morality just so that it's clear because I think that you can be objective about your moral foundation and you can make more conclusions, you can be objective about those conclusions, but I feel like
You
that's
can
all
be
obviously
so
semantical.
yeah. I understand you can make objective assessments once you establish a goal, but that establishing that goal is subjective in nature, right? But so what I
Exactly.
wanted to call about was yeah, which I don't have a problem with. I don't think there's a problem with that, but I have become convinced by T Jump's argument, and I'm not even sure how much he believes in the system as much as he uses it as a debate tactic, but I think it's pretty convincing that he believes in like a moral naturalism. Have you ever heard of that?
I'm not.
It sounds familiar, but I can't. If you asked me to talk about it, I wouldn't be able to.
Yeah. So the basic idea is for any phenomena, okay, in this case, morality, if you want to prove that,
He got raptured.
Uh-oh.
and then with that model, we'll try and make a prediction, right? Am I making
So
sense?
I'm very sorry, Dan. Yeah, I'm very sorry, Dan. We didn't
Yeah.
hear the last 30 seconds of what you said. So all we heard was the argument is basically, and then we heard, is that correct? So everything between those two things we didn't hear. So I'm very sorry. If you could repeat it succinctly, that'd be great.
Okay, maybe I'm moving around too much. So for any phenomenon, if we want to determine if it exists objectively or not, what we would do is try to determine if there's a pattern so that we can create a model and use that to make a prediction. If that prediction comes true, then that would give us reason to believe that that model's correct, right? And so what T Jump argues is that there is a basis for subjective moral systems, but if we value an objective moral system, then what we would need to do in order to establish that, uh, because none has been already, is make a prediction. And should that prediction come true, then we would know that morality is objective. Are you guys with me?
I think you would need a very specific definition of morality that that not everyone would agree with. And that's
Yeah.
normally when I have this kind of conversation, I actually ask for a definition of morality. Because yeah, for example, Frank Turek defines morality as how well something aligns to the mind of God. That's literally how he
Yeah. Yeah.
defines morality, right?
That could be like,
So if that's what, so then I'm going to apply T jumps, this naturalistic model based on that weird definition of morality is like, well, how can I make predictions about the mind of God? I can make predictions that might seem like it aligns with what my view of the mind of God is, but I don't have perfect insight into that. So I think it might work if you are going to grant already a definition of morality that is somewhat grounded in goals, but that might then seem to be ethics as opposed to morality. I don't know, John, what do you think?
'Cause
I'm
I
hearing
was
it for the first
well,
time.
I was yeah, well, I mean, I was just gonna ask, like, he's conceptually explained it,
I
but I'm
can,
just wondering if you can give, like, a practical example.
well, so I just wanted to break down that first part to kind of explain like the value of the objective model over the subjective model, kind of in some sense. But the moral principle that Duff arrived at is that any involuntary imposition of will is immoral.
Okay,
So
well, I mean, you're starting off from a subjective standpoint there. I mean, you're subjectively choosing
I feel
between
like all you could demonstrate is that what people mean by morality, what people mean when they say morality, can eventually be boiled down to something biological. And I agree with that
uh,
conclusion, but uh,
yeah, I would think that.
doesn't
Yeah.
I don't know what that gets us.
Well, at this point, it doesn't give us anything, but it's a bouncing board to a better moral system, a more factually based moral system, or widely acceptable moral system, something like that.
But it doesn't make it more absolute, like in the sense that John was talking about earlier, like when he was defining absolute. Like it still lands us into this thing. Like even if you want to say that if it's biologically rooted, right, then it's like, well, then it's actually survival motivated. But ultimately,
I
survival
don't know if I would
motivated
say
is subjective as well.
I'm not even sure I would say biological because I can see this applying to sentient robots, uh, anything that possesses a will. So it's more than biological.
okay, but I guess
So like, and
uh,
it kind of answers the question of who is a moral agent, any being that has a will, right? And then it's very easy to explain using this moral system, like the answers to moral dilemmas and stuff like that.
well,
But you still
yeah,
have to
so, like
subjectively go ahead, John.
no, no, you go ahead. Yeah, well, I mean, I
No,
think I was
I'm
gonna
done.
make the same point that you are that you're still arbitrarily picking, like, this particular goal or this particular standard, I guess, for which you are
Yeah,
judging
but
actions by. You're arbitrary, which makes
yeah,
it a subjective, like, worldview or like a subjective moral foundation. You're not providing us with anything that would be mind independent. Like, it requires a
not yet,
mind.
but yeah, but all of the theory start from a subjective basis to start, right? So like
I
think
mean,
about the justification
if
level
it's
in
subjective from
required
the
in order
start,
to
it's gonna continue to be subjective through, like, even when you get a fully fleshed out thing. Like, it doesn't all of a sudden become objective or absolute or
well,
universal or anything.
so when in science, when you want to prove something, the the initial assumption is that thing doesn't really exist yet, right? But then you use science, and via that process, you take your subjective opinion on it and give us some reason to believe that it's objective, right? That's how science works.
Well, science is making it wants to make
So like,
predict future predictions.
yeah,
It's
it's
how
those
well it
predictions,
predicts the future,
and
right?
until the predictions made, we say this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. He's just
Yeah.
imagining that's the
So
case, right? But
can
as
you?
soon as the prediction
I'm
comes true, we're like, oh shit, he knows what's happening.
it's a little difficult for me to have this conversation when we're speaking in generalities like this. Like, you know, is there any way that you could actually provide like a an example of what you're talking about, like a moral decision that you feel is made using this absolute moral foundation that you're proposing here? Like, is
I
it?
don't.
Can you give us an example?
I'm not sure I would call it absolute, but maybe that's the term. Uh,
Absolute,
well,
universal, doesn't matter.
so there's any of the moral dilemmas, like I guess we could do like the trolley problem or something. But there
Okay.
isn't. So like the trolley problem is what? Do you guys know it off the top of your head?
Yeah, oh, I mean, it's
One
essentially,
person,
I mean,
one.
it's traditionally one person's versus five per people or whatever, right? Like you have to you
Yeah,
have to decide which
and so
to
like
kill.
so yeah, and, the system works kind of weird. So because the answer to the trolley problem would be something like both choices are immoral, but you choose the one that the least immoral, given the pragmatic limitations of the situation.
Sure. For the
Okay.
sake of argument. Yeah.
Maybe I'm not being clear. I feel like I'm not being clear. I'm sorry, guys. It's a pun.
No, I mean, that's okay. I'm just, like, I get that you were trying to build up some kind of, like, build up the argument and everything like that. It's just that
Mhm.
you're starting off subjectively defining what your goal is, and then you're claiming that, when you get to the end of the argument, it's apparently transformed into this objective or absolute moral system. But I feel like if you
Only,
build it
only if the
entirely
prediction
off
were
of
to
us,
come true. Yeah.
But
well,
it
that's what
seems
I'm
like the
saying.
prediction,
Only at the prediction.
but it seems like your prediction is
Yeah.
that people will agree. Like that is the prediction, right?
So the pattern that I see is that the moral sphere of influence of people is greater, given a greater level of resources. So that's kind of the pattern that I see. So if you ever ran into an alien civilization, and they would be as moral as their resources allow them to be, something like that. Or if an alien robotic sentient comes to life, then it will be as moral as the resources that it's
Right.
able
But you
to have.
understand that game but you understand that I can just say, well, that's game theory. You know what game theory is?
Oh, yes.
Oh, to
You
be
cut out on me for a second.
like game like game theory is just one of it's like theories by which you can actually maximize happiness of more than one people by not everyone going for the most like that. At least that's one aspect of what game theory can be. And I feel like just the weird notion that people will be as moral as their resources allows is just like that's just another way of rephrasing my understanding, which may be flawed, of game theory. Um, and it doesn't let me anywhere to like what's this moral prediction that this naturalistic model what's this naturalistic model that I'm somehow supposed to see what this future prediction like aliens coming and me observing how moral they are. I still don't get how that's a prediction, right?
It does lack a certain amount of specificity. So, I mean, I think I could agree with
Well,
you there
also,
that I should
well,
definitely
al-
work on getting more specificity.
also, I want to point out how your description of what you're talking about would inherently be malleable, right? Like it inherently changes as the resources
Yeah.
change. So that would result in not an objective, like moral foundation, unless we're using the word
No, no,
objective in a different way.
no. So, okay. So in the various moral dilemmas that you might pose to me using this system, a lot of my answers are going to be something like that's a justified immoral action. Okay, and that's because the moral principle, as I've described, only allows for a small set of actions to be moral, and the rest are immoral, right? But given our society's limitations, okay, that's what causes certain immoral actions to be more acceptable than others, right? So, like that's why uh,
Acceptable to who?
in the acceptable, like so when you answer a moral dilemma, one of those people is going to die on the train, right?
Right?
And
Who's
we
making the
find one of
determination
the
that
answers.
whatever decision is not acceptable? Like, who's making that determination?
Each
Who's
each
like
person who feels morality.
Or each
right,
mind, right?
or each mind, which
Yeah,
therefore
exactly.
makes it.
We all feel.
Can you say it with me? It makes it mind dependent.
Dependent.
Uh, uh, our opinion, we have a moral opinion. That's correct. But what the moral thing is, right? Uh, that's the part. Like, it is effectively true that doing something that someone doesn't will against their will is immoral. Right?
How is that? No, I don't know. I don't. I don't think that's just an assertion.
Give me an example of something that you could do against someone will that would be more.
Well, but no, but
So
here's the thing. We have to define morality first, right?
That is what
Because
that is
all
what
you're saying, no, because all right. Well, unfortunately, you're breaking up quite a bit, and I can only hear a little bit of what you're saying, Dan. What you
probably
just said is
organized
that
my
we
best.
would
Sorry.
agree. No, but you also seem to be saying that we would. Hey, Dan and Paul agree intuitively, or by whatever process we come to evaluate morality, that we would come to the same conclusion about a specific action. But that, but that doesn't make it objective. That and for us to say it's objective, we actually would have to agree on what the goal was first, because if all you're predicting is what a majority of people's opinions about morality was going to be, that's one thing. But that, but the majority of people, I think we would agree at any given time, could be wrong, or could feel something as moral that might actually go against an actual goal of like reducing harm or increasing flourishing, right? Like there have been societies that tend to agree that killing our enemies is moral, right? And then you and I might not agree with that. They absolutely did. All your model is predicting is what people are
Yeah,
going to think, and so that's why I was asking. Your model
it predicts that too.
but it's predicting. All it's predicting is what a mind is going to come up with. Is what John was trying to get to. It's not actually making predictions about the action itself. It's just
Yeah,
it's predicting opinions about the actions. Unless I'm mistaken, unless I'm missing something huge, and maybe I am.
I don't think that you are.
I'm not sure. I mean, maybe I don't know. I have to think about that. Can you just pull it
Yeah,
ahead, but the principle itself, so
Dan,
it
Dan,
really has to do
Dan,
with the
Dan,
opinions of those.
Dan, Danny boy, you're roboting
Uh,
a whole lot. I don't know if like
We
your
can barely
internet
hear you.
has dropped pretty well. Uh,
So
I think that we're
Dan,
gonna.
sorry.
that's all right. But think this
Yeah.
through.
Can you hear me?
Call, organize your thoughts, and call in another time, because for now it's just we in the audience can't understand what you're saying, so it's not giving you a fair shot.
Right.
No. Okay. Okay. That's fair.
Yeah, and I'm gonna be on the line tomorrow night for Skep Talk. If you want to call in and ask Aaron, Adair, and myself the same thing again, feel free to do so. So hopefully you can have a better connection.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Sorry.
All right,
Have a nice
Sorry,
that's
night.
can't
okay.
understand you, but have a good evening.
But bye, Dan.
Have a good night.
It cleared up right there after I hit the drop button.
I
Uh,
mean, it's entirely
but yeah, I
possible
feel
that it's on our end. Who knows? But it was just at that point, there was no point in carrying on with that
yeah.
audio.
Yeah, and I appreciate everybody that called in tonight. But as far as this last call goes, I mean, I still feel like he was describing a mind dependent system there. I don't know how you get to a mind independent system if like you said you were he was predicting how people would react, and that
Mhm.
requires a mind in some kind of fashion, whether it's artificial mind or biological mind, it doesn't matter. I don't know how he gets to you know
Right. He was like, it was almost like some ethics prediction model. Like, okay, that might be interesting if you could come up with a model of ethics prediction. That would be an interesting that'd be, sociology, right? That's what that would be.
Mhm.
It wouldn't be morality at that point. It's
Yeah.
just that I can predict that, oh, well, this country has limited resources. And so based on their geography and all these things, I can predict this is what they're going to think is moral. Okay, cool. I mean,
And wouldn't that inherently be dependent on their resource? Like as they gain more resources, they have different resources available to them. Then, like it would, their decisions would change, right?
right, but I
Like,
feel like this was I think they were trying to say that they can scale up and down, like they can account for different variables in their model, and you plug the variables in and they can come up with what the answer is. So that's not subjective because they figured out what the rules are under like all the I don't know. I'm
right?
guessing because I we could only half
Yeah,
hear what he was saying. So
yeah.
I don't want to
But any,
butcher the model, but I agree with you.
Yeah. I'm not trying to butcher it at all either. I was just, I was just confused as to the entire system. But
Me too.
anyways,
Me too. Yeah.